there more? I think maybe like, I'm going to say like
get a hold of each other to the issue. We can do a direct message. This is all direct message. It's really 50. Most of, I mean, I'm the young side, and I'm still 20 years older. 20.
This is kind of a dirty version, a quick and dirty version. I've been told from somebody from the Women's March that really to do a full martial training, it has to be 3 hours, full role play. So we're gonna skip that version. Someday we can go do that version, but I mean, the main thing is that we help make sure that everybody is as calm and safe as possible. So that's the main thing that we want to constantly always project is an ability to lower and to de-escalate a situation as opposed to escalate a situation. And so some of the main things that we want to know are, like for example, what is our job? It's for the marshal, it's to facilitate the action as planned. So we take whatever direction you're going, and we're just kind of around you to make sure that it's good. I'm not really involved, obviously, in any of the decisions of where we're going or any of that stuff. We're just following, like, imagine like you're herding kittens, right? And you're the cowboy herding the kittens. In that one, have you seen that one ad where there's the really great cowboy that's herding kittens? And so it's okay wherever the kittens want to go, but we just kind of make sure that they're going to be safe wherever they're going, essentially, and make sure that we're the perimeters of where they can go as safe. You want to act as an information source between planners and demonstrators. So one of the things that we'll do is somebody will start a text chain so that if anybody has an issue, they can get a hold of everybody immediately. So that, like, say there's a person that goes down, needs immediate help, you all will be able to know, oh, you know what, we have this situation, and the people that are closest, they'll be able to help. You see what I mean? But there has to be a method of communicating to each other, and that's one of the main methods. The other thing is that you want to always have a safe word, where say something really bad happens, there's a agent provocateur that comes in and is really meant to take advantage of your awesome protest, but to do something that we don't all support, like destruction of property. Then what we do is we say, for example, and this is what I just recommend, is say sit down, because everybody knows what sit down means. And if everybody sits down, then frankly the people that are up and about are the people that are causing the problems generally. And so it's easier for whatever law enforcement, if necessary or anything like that, to get involved because it's just more obvious. So if worse comes to worse and something really bad happens, just know if we all sit down, it generally helps everyone sort out what's going on. So it's kind of like one of those like safe things. So just sit down. We want to help we want to help demonstrators be safe and feel good about demonstrating. So we're not going to, like, say somebody has a sign that I don't really agree with. I don't care about that. You know, as long as they're not using it to whack the person over the head, you know, you basically know your limits and what we're trying to do. So we're also trying to act as a buffer between the police and hecklers and bystanders. If we happen to have, the most dangerous situation is if we happen to have like some KKK type of people that want to protest outside of us, then what tends to happen is that you have, like, imagine that this is the KKK people, then we want to have the police in front of us, okay, between everybody, because we're not supposed to be the police. And then we want to be in front of the police, okay, and then we want to have you all right here, so that we're basically the protective layer, so that you're not all, you know, in between, like, the KKK and us. You know, that's the last thing that we want to do. Okay, what do we do on a ticket? No, I'll speed up quickly. So we want to make sure that everything is moving, so we're constantly guiding people. If there's some type of like an obstruction, like something like this in the middle of the way, a lot of times we'll just stand right in front of it to make sure that people like move to the side. If there's a step, like say we're moving over something and somebody's got to take a step, make sure that you kind of have somebody just there pointing at the step, because a lot of times when you have thousands of people if one person misses that step and then somebody falls down, then, you know, it doesn't take much for somebody to get trampled. So we just want to always be aware of those simple things like the steps. We want to watch the perimeters to make sure that the police knows what's going on. So one of the things that we want to do is have that communication with the police wherever they are. So whoever's the organizers, you know, they kind of will, you know, usually it's just one or two people that have the conversations with the police, so that everybody feels like, oh, you know what, we've been talking, it's okay, we know, you know, we're all okay. Then a lot of times you'll have like one of the marshals may be like somebody that's leading chants. So you want to make sure that a few of the marshals have these lovely megaphones that help. Let's see here. We want to always stay calm. And so one of the things that we never do is never run. Okay, so that's like one of the rules. If you're wearing one of those orange vests, never run. You don't want to carry a sign. So if you're a marshal, it's really easy to accidentally hit somebody with one of your signs. The wind blows, they're big, and so the last thing you want to do is accidentally cong somebody as a marshal. Let's see here. So we're going to have, wherever the march decides to go, usually you have at least 2 or 3 people up in the front, and then the rest divide in half, okay, and then you have like 4 or 5 people in the rear. So we surround the group, okay, and so we move out I guess as disjointed as we can, and if you get really like into it, then you really have like groups of 3 or 4 that you kind of pair off with, where you just don't ever lose sight of those 3 or 4. That way, you know, you feel like we have like control over a large group, because the main thing is again to make sure everybody ends up safe. Okay, moving on. The role of the police in the action is to protect property from damage and to contain demonstrators from making a commotion. What we never do is we never touch the police. Ever. Never touch the police. And then one of the things that we're always allowed to do legally, even without a permit, is we're allowed to stay on a sidewalk. Okay, so as long as we're moving on a sidewalk, that's always 100% legal. A sidewalk marked with signs and chanting, totally 100% legal. You're allowed to hand out leaflets to passers-by, all legal. Sometimes there's a limit on your megaphone, but a lot of times, frankly, they'll let us get away with it. But I'm sure that you had a limit or a sound amplification permit. Let's see here. And then when it comes to the police, we want to always essentially be the buffer. And if we need to sometimes stall, say there's something that we cannot cross the street, then we always have the person in the front basically making sure that everybody stalls appropriately. So nobody, like the last thing you want is our group to like wrap around each other and then walk all over each other. That doesn't work. It's a one-way type of anytime you're walking, you want to always have everybody walking in their own route. Does that make sense? Okay. Then I know it sounds counterintuitive, but if everyone's sitting down, then if there's ever horses, then they strangely enough, they're trained not to walk on you. So it's actually easier for the horses if we're all sitting down. You also always want to have good sturdy shoes when you're doing this. But that's the dirty of it. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so the whole goal is for everybody to have a safe time. And just remember, you're not the police, so that's not your job. If somebody gets out of control, that is really not your job. I mean, your job is to help them be safe. But again, you're not a police officer. We have no intention of making you do that. So I have some more vests, but if anybody wants one, please feel free to take one of these vests. And then at the end, if you don't mind, bringing them back. Thank you.
Thank you.
That much ammunition?
I don't know.
That's a lot of bullets.
Yeah, it is.
And it's basically literally they're just practicing. every year. It's kind of bonkers.
So if you need help,
30 grand on bullets.
bless you. How do scan those QR codes, please? Yeah, please feel free.
Voter registration tables over here as well, NAACP membership tables, and then we have an anti-racist info sheet up here. We'll be passing out some more stuff later at the rally, but just to get you started, bathrooms are over in that direction at the brick building. Hang tight, we'll be getting started shortly.
Did you have to travel very far to get here? Or are you from town? From town, okay. Thanks for coming out today.
My name is and I am one of about 20 people who have helped this event come to fruition. We have had a few challenges. Criticism, and weather setbacks, but it all combined together to turn this event into something even bigger and better than anyone had in mind. We are all so proud of what this event has turned into. We are all extremely proud of the Elmhurst residents who have joined in the Black Lives Matter movement, demanding social justice for everyone. I have lived in Elmhurst for 5 years, but I have worked in this town for 13. I have seen some great things happen in Elmhurst, but to me, today may be one of the most important events that has ever happened here. It makes me proud as a mixed-race person of color living in Elmhurst to see so many people out here supporting this movement. Over the past week, I have been heartbroken. I have been angry. I have been sad. I have also been uplifted and supported and have seen so many great things starting to come from this movement. I have already connected with some great open minds and look forward to connecting with even more. I really have to take a moment and applaud the younger individuals who have done the majority of the planning and executing of this event. To see such young people stand so strongly together for change that mostly does not even affect them has been my greatest source of inspiration during this time. It leaves me with hope that the younger generation has really been paying attention. They realize that in Elmhurst and everywhere, Black Lives Matter. They are stepping up to this ongoing challenge of doing what they can to fight for change. They are the hope for a better future. I hope you all stay for the entirety of this event. Not only will we be marching and chanting together, but we will come together back here for a rally. We will have a moment of silence, guest speakers, an open mic, and some closing remarks from one of the organizers of this event. We want this march and rally to be peaceful and successful, so we have outlined a few guidelines for you all to follow throughout the duration of your time with us. There is still a global pandemic happening out here. Please remember to continue to practice social distancing. Please maintain 6 feet between yourself, other protesters, volunteers, and police. Be sure to use hand sanitizer as needed and keep your masks on and worn correctly. We are all within our rights to leave and return back to this area, but here are a few guidelines that should be followed. Our rights for assembly allow us to be on any public property as long as we do not obstruct vehicle traffic. For your safety and protection, this means that we ask you to remain on the sidewalks and tree banks and stay off of the streets. Please allow others to pass if needed and follow any traffic lights while crossing streets. Our new route will be down Arthur Street to York, to St. Charles, to Hagens Avenue, back up Elm Park Avenue, to Prospect North, where we will re-enter Wilder Park. We will march together, only splitting the crowd up on both sides of the street to allow everyone more space. Acts will not be tolerated in any way. Do not engage with any counter-protesters that may be out here. We are here to show our support for racial justice, and violent acts undermine the message. A few last notes about safety. Be sure to stay hydrated. Please be vigilant of your surroundings, especially when crossing the streets. Have a buddy and devise a meeting point if you get separated. If you have any questions or issues, please find a volunteer for help. Thank you for listening. I'll now hand over the mic to Eliza for land acknowledgement.
The people of these nations' cultures maintained a sacred bond with these lands for thousands of years before they were forced out. Their cultures of sustainability created abundance. Native cultures of always giving equally to taking, and of teaching children that by just taking enough, everyone gets to have enough. These cultures thrived for millennia until colonizers pushed west to steal more of this continent, bringing with them the colonial culture of never having enough, over-consuming, and exhausting resources. Settler colonialism is a system, not an event that happens in the 19th century. Most of us are here because of colonization. It is incredibly easy to forget or ignore that we still benefit from this system today. You may be more familiar with its current name, capitalism. Capitalism in the United States has always thrived on the backs of working-class non-citizens. Non-citizens meaning Native Americans, enslaved Africans, incarcerated people, and immigrants like my father. These mostly black and brown workers are essential, yet in the eyes of the system, their lives are expendable. The way this pandemic has been managed in the United States makes that very clear. Disproportionate deaths in black and brown communities reveal how the racist system starves working-class communities of resources, while from just March to May, American billionaires hoarded a 15% wealth increase at $434 billion. We rely on washing our hands to be safe during this pandemic. 1908 U.S. law declared Indigenous Americans have priority water rights over all others. 05 education hardly mentioned Native people. This is another way of eliminating them. When mentioned, Native peoples were always framed as a savage myth of the past, whose only legacy is mascots and casinos. I never learned that Elmhurst, Illinois occupies the ancestral lands of the Peoria, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Miami, and Sioux peoples. I never learned that thanks to generations of resistance, these people and their cultures still exist in the present. I never learned that despite deadly oppression, there will be Indigenous futures, because change is coming. White men created our racist system of never having enough, and now is the time for all of us to actively do the work to take that toxic racist system down. It was never built to last. The earth literally cannot handle it. With all of us united, with the leadership of Black and Indigenous people, with people power, we can replace our toxic system with a sustainable culture where everyone has enough. Thank you. And now, Allie.
If you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. All right, can we please hear it one more time for that great land acknowledgement by Eliza? All right, so my name's Allie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'll be leading Chants today. I'll be introducing Chants and what they mean to actions such as protests, and then we'll be on our way with our procession. So, recently, many of us have come to know the word privilege, and particularly right now, white privilege. I am here to introduce another term, positionality. So this term, positionality, has been used for a very long time by sociologists, anthropologists, social scientists of the like, and I think positionality can help us all to understand what privilege means. So, positionality means your identity based on the social and political structures we were born into. So how are you, and the various identities you have, racial, gender, socioeconomic, how are those created by the social and the political structures that we are born into, that we are grown into, and that we inherently learn from. Now, with this in mind, think about your positionality. Think about how your experience is vastly different from the person next to you, the person behind you, in front of you, to the side of you. I want you all to take a moment and look around. Look to your left, look to your right. I want you to notice that the crowd in front of me today, in front of all of us, is a predominantly white crowd. And that is not a bad thing. As someone who grew up in Elmhurst, felt the isolation of growing up as one of the only non-white faces in this town, I never thought I'd see this many people up here today caring about something like this. And I say that with sincerity. However, with privilege is power, is responsibility. The lives we have led are vastly different from those of our neighbors. If we are white, they are vastly different than the lives of our Black peers. And that means that we have a responsibility to uplift the voices that have so long been quieted, intentionally quieted. Now, I'm going to talk briefly a little bit about words. All of us know that words have meaning. We have all been hurt by words, and we have all used words to hurt somebody else. Words carry violence. Words also carry pain. One of the chants that many of you have probably heard throughout the protests that have swept the country for the past almost 3 weeks now are the last words of George Floyd and the last words of Eric Garner. I can't breathe. Now, again, I want you to think about who you are, your position in this society that was created by these social and political structures, okay? If we are not Black, when we invoke I can't breathe as a chant, that is not our pain. For many of us who are not Black, we have never had our breath taken away because of the color of our skin. So I am not saying, don't say this, don't say that. However, I am encouraging you today and onwards to think about your position from these political structures in relation to the words you say? How does your positionality change the meaning of your words? All right. Sorry, concision is never been a strong point for me. All right, so next I'm going to talk about chants. And I think I wrestled for a while about whether or not I should share these chants that we're going to do on the Facebook page beforehand so that people could learn them and then we could all come together. And I realized that, you know, during protests, one of the beautiful things about these chants during protests is that chants force each other and require us to listen to one another. Today, as you walk in procession, I will be leading chants, but hopefully you will sense places in your path of walking that are more silent. And in that situation, I do encourage you to raise your voice and begin a chant. So chanting requires you to listen to one another. You'll hear someone pick up a chant maybe, you know, yards away, and then you'll bring it into the fold of where you are. That's important. Another part is lifting each other up. Chanting is vocally taxing. And again, it goes back to listening. When you notice that the person chanting voice is failing, it is your job to lift up their voice and take on the chant. It's also very much about unity. Many people united by one cause. And I think the chant itself symbolically really captures the spirit of the people fighting for justice. There's a quote from Jeremy Barron that I'm going to share with you. He is a professor at the New School in New York. He says, "Chants help give a sense of common purpose to the people at any given rally and becomes a shared language that can unite individual protests in groups across the country and the world who are sort of saying the same thing at the same time." The chants we do today are the same chants that are being spoken in New York, in California. They're being spoken in New Zealand, in Japan, globally. I want you to really think about how these chants are an articulation of a collective social consciousness. A collective social consciousness that is demanding justice and the protection of Black lives, Black families, and Black futures. Now, I'm going to walk us through a few chants, and please, even though I've got the big sound equipment, again, we need everybody to participate in these chants. We need everybody to lift up the chant when you feel it kind of faltering. So, again, this is, you kind of learn as you go. Ready? Who are we? Elmhurst. What is this? A peaceful protest. Who are we? Elmhurst. What is this? A peaceful protest. Who are we? Elmhurst. What is this? A peaceful protest. Who are we? Elmhurst. What is this? A peaceful protest. Great job. All right, next one. No justice, no peace. Defund the police. No justice, no peace. Defund the police. No justice, no peace. Defund the police. Defund police. Refund communities. Defund police. Refund communities. Awesome. Great learners. All right. Next one. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, if we don't get it, shut it down. 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 Very nice. Oh, we're not done. Lesson's not over. Stay tuned in. All right. When Black lives are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. When Black lives are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. When Black lives are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. When Black lives are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. Very nice. I do want to remind people that it has been over 90 days since Breonna Taylor was shot 8 times in her home. Yes, and her killers have still not been charged. Yes. So, Elmhurst, who do we march for? Breonna Taylor. Who do we march for? Breonna Taylor. Who do we march for? Breonna Taylor. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. Breonna Taylor. George Floyd. Breonna Taylor. George Floyd. Breonna Taylor. All right, and then this last one, and then I'll go over the directions one more time, and then we'll head on our way. Silent cops are guilty too. 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 All right, as I said, I'll be dispersed somewhere throughout this great long line of processors, so please make sure that you are making sure that these messages are being heard in your section. Okay. Now, please listen carefully. I'm going to reiterate the directions. Now, after I state the directions, you are going to look for Matt and Diane. We're going to begin to line up in front of them, and then we'll be on our way. Again, to reiterate, please stay with the group. Please stay on the sidewalks and the tree banks. All right, so we will be processing east down Arthur, south down York, west on St. Charles, north on Higgins, east on Elm Park, before heading back to Wilder. If you are no good at cardinal directions, like myself, just follow the crowd. We're kind of hard to miss. All right. Elmhurst, are you ready? Yeah. Who are we? Elmhurst. Who are we? Elmhurst. What is this? A peaceful protest. Who are we? Elmhurst. What is this? A peaceful protest. Who are we? Elmhurst. What is this? A peaceful protest. All right, let's process. Keep starting those chants. Who are we? Elmhurst. What is this? A peaceful protest. Who are we? Elmhurst. What is this? A peaceful protest. Who are we? Elmhurst. What is
These racist cops have got to go! Hey, hey! These racist cops have got to go! 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 Hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Hey hey! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go! Black Lives Matter! 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 Black families matter! Black families matter! Black children matter! Black children matter! Black futures matter! Black futures matter! Black lives matter! Black lives matter!
Don't shoot! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name! Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot! George Floyd!
So much fun. Well, I fit in that car. George Floyd! Breonna Taylor! Breonna Taylor!
Breonna Taylor! Breonna Taylor! Silent cops are guilty too! 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 Peace! Equal police! Justice for peace! Equal police! Okay, wait. We gotta let cars through. Go this way. What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! If we don't get it, shut it down! If we don't get it, shut it down! 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 What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! If we don't get it, shut it down! We don't get it! 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 Shut it down! Stay on the sidewalks, everyone! Make sure to stay on the sidewalks and stay located! Justice for peace! Defender police! Justice for peace! Defender police! Justice for peace! Defender police! Justice for peace!
you can smile.
Yes, I can, but you cannot see it.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
Say her name! Breonna Taylor! Say her name! 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 George Floyd! Breonna Taylor! George Floyd!
want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! Now! Justice! Now! Justice! Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want it? Now! George Floyd! Breonna Taylor! 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 George Floyd! Breonna Taylor! 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 Breonna Taylor!
they're even though they think they're making a statement by saying nothing, they're looking at it.
Your class of 1980 rules. Who's watching the watchers?
Does that give you a new dry spot?
No justice, no peace. No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace. 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 No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace.
Few people realize that's the 1978 party house, where true liberty began in this town.
These racist cops have got to go, hey, hey! Oh, these racist cops have got to go, hey, hey! Oh, these racist cops have got to go, hey, hey! Oh, these racist cops have got to go, these racist cops have got to go, hey, hey!
And better job of cleaning because it was so hard. Yeah, but then so then there was another one. He's right.
people. Let's hear you, Elmhurst. Let's spread something up. Let's hear those voices. No justice. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. Defund the police. 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 No justice. No peace. Reform the police. Black Lives Matter. 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 Black Lives Black Lives Matter. 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 Black Lives Matter.
Ride the hair with it. I wowed it, man.
Thank you.
Free cookies?
Sure thing.
Too full? I don't want to get near.
On a day like today, it's impossible.
Hey, for everyone in the back, there's a lot of green space up here if you want to keep moving forward so we can get all the folks that are still coming from the march coming in. There's a lot of space on this to my left, and a lot of space right up front here, so keep moving.
which is our rally, we wanted to take a moment to take 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence. That is how long a police officer held his knee on George Floyd's neck, even as he was shouting out, "I can't breathe." I would like everyone to kneel, if you are able, and take a moment of silence for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Thank you. Your name will continue to be a rallying cry as we transform the world. At this time, can I ask anyone who's scheduled to speak to just come over here? Also, we have water right over here on this table, and if you're feeling at all too hot or anything, get into the shade, please. Your safety is of the utmost priority to us right now. So, as we move to the next part, I will just introduce myself. My name is Karina. I've lived in Elmhurst since I was 3 years old. I've gone through all of the public schools here in Elmhurst, and I love our community. It was an amazing community for me to grow up in, but obviously I recognize that there is still a lot of work to be done, both within myself and everyone else in this community. We know that we are a majority white community, and therefore it is even more important for us to come together and uplift the Black Lives Matter movement. We know that as a mostly white community, we have been afforded privileges that are not something we can take for granted and move forward, but they are a responsibility we have to pay back to our communities. We know that, as I speak to the white people of our community, that there have been struggles that POC, especially Black and Indigenous POC members of our community, have faced that we have no concept of, not a single bit. And we have to acknowledge that we don't know, but we must learn. When me and a few of my friends got together with the organizers of the march to add this rally to the end of it, we wanted education to be our main priority. There is so much education for us to do moving forward. We have QR codes over here that when you get a chance to scan them, places to get educated, places to donate, and that's just the beginning of it. Go out, do your research, seek out POC people to listen to, hear their stories, listen, don't respond, just listen, let it sink in. Hear and learn from their experiences so we can be better allies and better community members to people who may feel brushed over in this community. Now today we have a variety of speakers that we're going to hear from, and I want you to keep your hearts and your minds open and just listen. Firstly, we have Michael, who we are so grateful to have here with us today. He is the president of the DuPage chapter of the NAACP. And we were so lucky to be able to collaborate with him on this. He's provided so much valuable insight to us, and today could not have gone as smoothly as it did without him. So without further ado.
How is everybody today? I'll be brief, but I have a couple of things we want to talk about. When I was a young kid, and I remember going to school, first day of school, and we all stood, we put our hands over our hearts, and we said the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag. I need your help. We're not going to say the whole thing. I just want you to help me say the last line of the Pledge of Allegiance. Does anybody know what that is? All right. 1, 2, 3. I didn't think I heard that. Give me again. I want you to say it loud enough that they'll hear it in Minneapolis. One more time. Now, I've always wondered when our all, what part of all were we? Because I never understood what that meant as I grew up. I spent a lot of time when I turned 17. I had white friends, black friends, Hispanic friends. I grew up in Maywood, very diverse community. But something happened when I turned about 16. I started getting stopped by the police more, and it was always the same line. It was always, there was a crime or a burglary in the community, and you fit the description. So I got so used to it by the time I was 17 that when they stopped me, I just say, you know, I've been fitting the description since I was 12 years old. That's just the way it was. So 40 years ago, and I want to thank Matt and the organizers of this great march. 40 years ago, I was Matt. My first march was for the end of apartheid and the jailing of Nelson Mandela. I didn't know what it was, but I got educated real fast, just like you are today, and I wanted to understand why that system was in place and why this man was in prison. Fast forward, 40 years later, I'm still an activist, and it's in my blood. We're getting close to the 4th of July, and as we start to get close to that, again, as a people, we were not part of that 4th of July. 1776, Declaration of Independence, we didn't get freedom until 1863, and actually 1866, which we'll be celebrating Juneteenth, was when the last slaves were liberated. So when I went back and I looked at that 4th of July document, that 4th of July document, someone said about education. I read these documents because I, like you, am a proud American. So I live the documents that they taught us to read. And in that document, the first line of that document says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." Now, I don't know how you misinterpret self-evident, but self-evident is just self-evident that all men, and when I say all men, I mean mankind, are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, what happened to George Floyd's life, liberty, and his pursuit of happiness? What happened to Breonna's? What happened to Mr. Marbury's? And the list just goes on and on. Trayvon, Jordan Davis. The list continues to grow at a very alarming rate. So when people tell you about, you go to these things and they say, please rise for the national anthem, think about the people that are not there anymore. Now, I'll end with this. A lot of people have come to me, a lot of white people have come to me, and they said to me, you know, I wish I was black so I could join the NAACP. and I said, you need to attend one of our meetings, because we have probably the most diverse branch that you'll ever find, okay? our branch is made up of all races, creeds, colors, because we're all fighting for the exact same thing. We have the same thing in common as everyone else in the branch. We're here for equal justice under the law and equal civil rights. So you don't need any type of race, creed, religion, or anything to fight for civil rights. Now, we don't just fight for our civil rights, we fight for everyone's civil rights. Every single person's civil rights. And we don't care what your background is. So with that, I will end with one thing. Are there any members of the NAACP here today? And if you are, can you join me on stage really quick? I am so proud to be a part of the NAACP. It is the oldest civil rights organization in the world, and we have over 500,000 members. Now, I'm going to end because I can't remember it, but my wife does. She always does. She will tell you that we are the oldest, boldest. Come on over here. She will tell you what the NAACP is.
We are the oldest, the boldest, the baddest, the most loved, the most feared civil rights organization in the world.
Now, this is what diversity looks like. This is our members. This is what our branch looks like. Just so you know, we have membership table over there. We're all in this fight together. And together, we are stronger than we are as individuals. Thank you.
And next up, we are so excited to have one of our younger protesters here, Salma. She's going into 10th grade at York High School. Show her some love.
Good afternoon. My name is Salma Grobe, and I am entering my sophomore year at York Community High School. I've joined you all here today because I am accepting my opportunity to use my voice and speak out against the injustices that continue to plague our society. I'm speaking to you as a woman of color, as a girl who learned from a young age that people weren't always going to like me, simply because the color of my skin. I still remember the first time that it hit me that not everyone was willing to see me as their equal. I was in 6th grade. I was at the mall waiting in line alone in the cafeteria to bring myself and my family some Auntie Anne's pretzels. The woman in front of me was with her friends, but they left her alone briefly so that she could buy them some food. As soon as they had left, the lady reprimanded me for standing so close to her in line. She claimed that she was claustrophobic and proceeded to talk about how she wouldn't have been surprised if I had already stolen something from her, given how I looked. It didn't register in my head right away that she was attacking me for the color of my skin, and it didn't fully hit me until I returned to the table, pretzels in hand, to retell the encounter to the rest of my family.
My mother was furious with the unknown woman and wished that I had left line earlier to tell her. Looking back now, I wish that I had told her too. At the time, I genuinely had no idea how I was supposed to react in that situation. The rest of the mall trip was tainted by that single encounter, and I remember entering a store dressing room and breaking down in the arms of my mother. I wish I could tell you that that was the only time I fell victim to encounters of that sort of nature, but unfortunately, I can't. Throughout the years, I continued to endure microaggressions in daily conversations, unapologetically racist comments, and the feeling of being out of place in a room filled with people who look nothing like me. I'm used to being the odd one out, but when daily interactions are filled with statements and actions that constantly remind me that I am different, I feel more and more out of place. Being asked, "Can I touch your hair?" is a frequent occurrence in my daily life, and the spectacle made out of the simple existence of my hair never once made me feel special. Instead, it made me feel as if I was an exhibit, to be gawked and admired at, instead of an actual person. More often than not, my hair was touched without my permission, and the word no was never enough to deter the unwanted attention. I've completed my first year of high school, and throughout that year, I took with me experiences that I will never forget. One of them would be the time that a boy in my class took the time to refer to me as Monica, making an emphasis on drawing out the word in an attempt to indirectly call me the N-word. The same boy would also take every chance that he could to bring up racial stereotypes particular to the African American community. One of them including the false belief that we don't know how to swim. While these weren't the most pleasant experiences during my freshman year, I'm happy to say that for the first time in my academic career, I have the opportunity of having a teacher who looked like me, my speech coach. While he isn't a teacher at York, it meant a lot to have a person that I look up to, who related to me on a level that no other teacher ever has before. It's important for me to feel seen, especially in a world that sometimes makes me feel as if I shouldn't be. And I'm glad that this year was the first year that I could truly experience that. I've always grown up knowing that I wanted to change the world. While I never knew when or how, I knew that I wanted change, and that waiting around for others to fix it for me wasn't going to cut it anymore. Today is where I take my first step. My first step towards using the voice that I was given to speak up and fight for the change that I no longer want to see, but need to see in our society. We can no longer tolerate the hatred of another human being based on aspects of who they are that they cannot control. We cannot tolerate the refusal of basic human rights to those who don't share the same characteristics that we possess. We must do better, and we can do better. But the only question is, are we willing to do the work? We must be open to having conversations that make us uncomfortable. We must be willing to listen to others and their experiences, even if they are completely different than our own. To simply put it, we must acknowledge the problem if we want to create the solution. We can no longer be passive activists who post a picture of a black screen for a trend and proceed to go back to their daily lives once hashtag Blackout Tuesday is over. And we can no longer give thoughts and prayers to the countless black communities that continue to lose innocent lives simply over the color of their skin. All lives matter, but how can we say that all lives matter if black ones don't? How can we say that everyone is equal when the numbers and the facts tell a different story? The truth is that we can't, and we can no longer instill the false idea that everything is okay simply to avoid the feeling of being uncomfortable. We are living history right now, and the choices that you make today will impact the side of history that you stand on. Will you stay silent in privilege, or will you speak up and join the chorus of voices that no longer wish to be silenced when speaking on their oppression? You get to decide. But at the end of the day, remember that the choices that you have each contain an individual impact on this movement. And whatever you decide will change the course of many lives for better or worse. I know what side of history I want to be on. Do you?
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing? All right, if you went to York High School or if you currently go, can you please stand up for me? Just really fast. And Salma, can you please come back up here for a second, help me out? So, we all went to York. We've been through the same things, right? Wake up in the morning, you know, go to school, whether it's a bus or a car. Get breakfast, you know, go to lunch, go through classes, after school activities. We all, if you're an athlete or not, we've been on the track or we've been on the field, we've been doing workouts. But my thing is if we're all in the same high school, what makes us different? As Salma said before, you know, she's dealt with things that most of you have not dealt with. For example, can I touch your hair? What would you say? No. She's not an animal. I'm not an animal. We're not from a zoo. When people ask, can I say the N-word? What would you say? No. I'd say no. Why even ask that a question? It gets to a point where I don't know if people are messing with me, whether they want to be my friend or they think I'm just from a whole nother universe. There's a lot of things here that you may not understand that you do that seems racist or not. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't write anything out. I got no outline for this. I just figured I'd speak up just because it's coming from in here. But look at this. Well, thank you. But look at this march here. This is Elmhurst. Like, what are the police scared of? It's mostly white anyways. When you go look at places like South of Chicago, Minneapolis, when they try to protest, what happens? They got shot with bullets. Tear gas. People were beaten and thrown in jail for no reason. But look what we were able to do here. It was peaceful. So if you really think you don't have privilege, come up here and say that to my face. Because that's ridiculous. I ran track at York. I run track now. I'm trying my best to become the best I can be. I have teammates that can't even work out because of how bad their neighborhoods are. So I just ask you one question. I want you to look at her, look at me, look at any person that's colored, that's from a different culture, don't understand. What makes us different? We're all people. Thank you.
Let's hear it for DeAndre! Woo! Next up, we have one of the original organizers of the march, Camille. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. Hi Elmhurst, hi local friends. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful day. We persisted through weeks of
opposition and weather, and now we are here together, and that is the most important part, so thank you all for coming out today. Like Karina said, my name is Camille, and I am a lifelong Elmhurst resident. I currently attend Miami University as a mechanical engineering student, studying sociology as my minor. And as a white person, I am not here to speak to you today for Black folk on behalf of people of color or indigenous folk. That is not my place. Rather, I come to you today to discuss unity, justice, and change. So as previously stated, I was born and raised in Elmhurst, and as a kid, I absolutely loved everything about Elmhurst. You know, there are obvious reasons to love this place. We have excellent schools, beautiful parks, and oftentimes, we're a very supportive community. Now, as a young adult, I realized that we are not perfect. We are resistant to change. Even a new restaurant could come up downtown, and it would take months before anyone would go there as a true Elmhurst citizen. But that's not all. We see ourselves as a peaceful community, and ironically, we fight to protect that. When I was in the early stages of planning this organization with a couple of other members and my peers, there was a lot of opposition, especially subtleties. I read through many Facebook comments saying things such as, "I support this cause," referring to Black Lives Matter, "but why do we need to bring this protest to Elmhurst?" And others critiquing the march, fearing for their safety. In one sense, this is an understandable concern. There's a unique uncertainty in the world right now, and Elmhurst can seem like a safe bubble to escape it all. Yet avoiding the topic of race is ignorant, stupid, and white silence is a crime. Elmhurst is not immune to racial disparities. We are 90% white, and according to the most recent US Census, nearly only 10% of our population are minorities, less than 2% of who are Black. That in itself should be a very telling statistic. It does not mean that we don't have a right to speak. We have something unique in Elmhurst called white privilege. Now, this doesn't mean that every person who is white has had a super easy life. In fact, that is not what it means at all. In fact, I'm sure that many white members of the audience have worked very hard for their successes and have overcome a multitude of difficulties. White privilege, though, is acknowledging that being white did not account for any of these difficulties. You heard our two previous speakers talk about their experiences growing up in Elmhurst being more difficult than others just because the color of their skin. So like many of you in the audience, I have seen many powerful people with the same skin tone as me who look like me. No police officer has ever pulled me over or spoken to me merely because I don't look like I fit in with my community. I have never felt like my country did not respect me because the color of my skin. This is not a reality for Black folk and other people of color. Despite trying our best, we live in a town, a world, and a nation where racism thrives. Elmhurst specifically allows racism to thrive by lacking support for our residents who are minorities. So now as we gather, I want every one of you, especially white folk in the audience, to think about your implicit biases that you carry every day, whether it's slightly judging another coworker and her abilities, maybe just because she's Black and you feel uncomfortable around her, or anything that makes us look at people differently. It is important to think about these prejudices, why we hold them, and why we continue to let others hold them. Now, I will never understand what it is like to be Black or of a different race. No one here who is white will ever truly understand the struggle that comes with a different skin tone. But what matters is, as a white community, that we listen to Black people. We listen to the folks in our communities, the 2%. We educate ourselves. We must continue to adapt in order to be inclusive. This also means that we cannot let the death of George Floyd and these protests be a trend. This is not something that we are just posting on our Instagrams so that people can respect us. We need to continue to fight for equality because we cannot wait until another Black person is killed at the hands of our own police and our own nation. We have a duty to continue speaking. It is okay to be white. It is okay to be black. It is okay to acknowledge the white privilege that we have in Elmhurst and use it for good. So instead of shielding Elmhurst from the outside and from these protests, let's continue to stand up and fight for what's right. Let's march together in unity to prove our commitment to ending racism. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. So as we're about halfway through the speeches, we're going to transition into a little bit of a different part of our rally here. The first thing I would like you to do is I would like you to all get your phones out. I'll give you a second to do that. Get your messages open. And I want you to text to the number 55156. Text to the number 55156. And in the text message section, type enough and send that. This will send you to a link to demand justice for Breonna Taylor. I don't know if many of you have seen, but Louisville, Kentucky just passed a law that bans no-knock warrants in honor of Breonna Taylor. And that is worthy of a round of applause. However, her killers still have not been prosecuted. They passed a law for her, and she still has no justice for her death. Sign this petition, demand justice. As you do that, we're going to transition into an open mic section of this rally. Again, we don't want to silence any voices, but of course we want to prioritize Black and Indigenous people of color. And you have approximately 5 minutes. When, if you're at the 1 minute warning, I'm just going to come down, stand down here, give you a little one. Yeah, that's about it, I'd say.